You have the theory, you have the practice, and you have to have the result. So if you say that life is coming from chemicals, like Darwin, basically it's all Darwinian theory, if you're saying life in the womb is developing because of the chemicals mixing under favorable conditions, take some chemicals and make some life. Let's be scientific. You have your theory, you practice it, and you show me. Demonstrate, isn't it? Scientific to demonstrate in the laboratory, wherever in front of your group, here's the evidence my theory is true. Take some chemicals and make life. To date, no scientist has taken chemicals and made anything as seemingly insignificant as an amoeba. What to speak of a fly or a human being? It's all theory. It's not knowledge. Theory becomes knowledge when it's demonstrated. But I can show you that life comes from life. Because to get that embryo, you need a mom and a dad. So essentially, life has come from life. And they had parents, and they had parents, and they had parents. And if you could trace it back to the beginning of time, you would come to Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Life comes from life. As long as that Atma is there in the embryo, growing, 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 of course the embryo is not very developed, but the soul is there in its entirety. Like I see in your country, sometimes, well, often people don't have enough money, so they build a structure, and before it's even complete, they move in. And because they're there, then the walls are painted, the curtains come, the bathroom's completed, they paint the outside, they tile the roof, because that's all happening because someone's there. So the embryo's growing because of the presence of the Atma. This is the journey of self-discovery. This is the real journey. It's better than going to Disneyland in Orlando, Florida. It's better than going and seeing Big Ben in London. It's better than going to Beijing and seeing this. The journey within is the most important journey, to discover the self within. As long as that soul stays within that body grows. There's birth, there's infancy, there's childhood, there's teenage, there's young adult, there's old age, by God's grace. You can live to ripe old age. And then, what? In my country we say there's two things you have to do. You have to pay taxes and you have to die. Now you may be able to get away with not paying your taxes. I will not ask to raise your hands if you're not paying your taxes, because there may be some government officials here. But everyone has to die. It's not a subject matter that we like to dwell on, but we should be prepared. For any significant event, we are prepared. The birth of our children, or our marriage, let's say our graduation from school, university, our marriage, the birth of our first child, when we move into our home, when we retire. These things we just don't leave them to chance. Significant moments in our life are observed, at least in ancient Vedic culture, by samskaras, purificatory ritual ceremonies, which leave a deep spiritual impression upon the practitioner. It's the beauty of Vedic. Any significant moment has a spiritual importance behind it, leading us towards God. That is Vedic culture. We prepare ourselves for the future. Right now, you're students. Why? Why not just party all day and night? Because life is tough. You need a career. You need a good education so you can get a solid job and be peaceful, relatively peaceful in this world. And when you work, you put money aside, because in the future you're going to grow old. And when you grow old, it's hard to work. We're always preparing for the future. So if I ask you, what happens when your body dies? Where are you going? Again, we go, mum. I can understand this happening in the West, but not in India. Bharat, one definition of Bharat in Sanskrit is illumination or light. India is a land of illumination. And I don't mean the beautiful sunshine you have here on your beautiful Malabar coast. The illumination of knowledge. Everyone should be able to answer that question. Where are you going when you leave this body? Oh, Swamiji, these things I will discuss with my wife when I am old, 80 years old. Now life is meant for enjoyment. But do not children die within the womb? Do not children die when they're 6 years old? Do not teenagers meet their fate? Do not middle-aged? Actually, the older people are the minority because all their friends have passed away. We can't procrastinate on these essential truths of life. We have to find the balance. We have our education, we have our family, we have our career, we have our entertainment, our enjoyment. That's fine. But life is all about balance. As Buddha said, quoting Buddha, although he was an atheist, he was a special incarnation with a special purpose. We don't have time to go into his message, essentially, but he was not speaking a theistic philosophy. But he taught the middle way. Not that everyone becomes a sadhu and has very few possessions and goes to the forest and lives a life of renunciation. No. You have your family, your career, your friends, your country, you're concerned about the environment. Those things are all there. We have human nature. We're here. We have to take care of these things. But there's the other side we should not neglect. There's the spiritual side. Not that one is more important than the other. Of course, ultimately, the spiritual side is more important because at the moment of death, everything's taken away. And you can't say at the last moment. Just like you can't just fool around the next 4 years and then sit for your final exam in pharmacy and the last night crammed. Okay, who will pass the final examination? No one. It's a gradual accumulation of knowledge. And when does it begin? At 5 years of age. As soon as the intelligence awakens, 5-year-olds, they're kind of cute. They have the funniest questions sometimes. Hey, boy, he's a smart little kid. As soon as the intelligence awakens, we start giving this balance of education. I was on the, where was I? Oh, I was invited to someone's house in Delhi for a program. And we were sitting and taking some food afterwards, some prasadam. And I said to one of the boys, who's about 10 years old, I said, "Who's your favorite character in the Ramayana?" He said, "The what?" I said, "Ramayana." Oh, I didn't hear of that. I said, "Do you know who is Hanuman?" "No." "Who do you know?" And he named some cricketer who just retired recently last year, some famous cricketer, and he practically broke into tears. The cricketer had retired. I thought about Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman. Lakshman, somebody is a famous singer. I was going, oh my God. Cry, my beloved country. You know Nelson Mandela. He was a great leader. A great leader, Nelson Mandela, South Africa. Seeing the sorry state of affairs in his country after he got out of jail for 20 years or 25 years, he wrote a book, Cry, My Beloved Country. So sometimes I think like that because I identify more with India. If I have to identify with something, material terminology in this world, I would identify with India rather than America because I spend more time in your country than I spend any other country in the world. So sometimes I'm thinking, cry, my beloved country. But it doesn't have to be that way. Especially if the intelligent people of this country share this wisdom with others. Where will we go? As you know, it depends on our activities in this life. Karma. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Like in physics, if If you exert a certain amount of force, you can determine exactly how far the object will move. So on a more subtle plane, a subtle law of nature is that we are responsible for our actions because of our higher intelligence. Children are not, under 5, are not held accountable for their actions because they don't have the intelligence to know what is right or is wrong. But when you get older, you are responsible. So animals, the birds, the beasts, the fish, the insects, they're not responsible for the actions. They don't have the intelligence to know what is right and what is wrong. But as human beings, we know what is right and wrong. And it's not determined by what the present government is necessarily saying. It's given by the laws in ancient scriptures like Bhagavad Gita. And if we want to avoid a miserable fate after we leave this body, or we would like to enjoy a better fate after we leave this body, we can live our lives according to the wisdom of our ancient scriptures. Because if we do good, good will befall us, and if we do bad, bad will befall us. However, there's another alternative. And this is the beauty of the Gita. Abrahma bhuvana loka punar arvito arjuna mamopetati kontiya punarjanmana vidyate. Krishna summarizes my little talk tonight because eloquence is truth spoken concisely. I'm going on, but Krishna can say it in a very beautiful way. From the highest planet in the material world, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest, Patalok. Life is full of problems, difficult, so many miseries. But Punarjanmana Vidyate. One who attains to my abode, O Arjuna, never takes birth again. This is real graduation. I'm sorry, professors, but I know you want to encourage your students to graduate. And I also encourage them to graduate. But the ultimate graduation is to graduate from the cycle of samsara, the repetition of birth and death. Because if we have any attachment to this world, even the slightest little attachment, we have to take birth again to fulfill that desire. And maybe while fulfilling that desire, we become implicated in more material activities, perhaps some sinful activities, and then we're entangled again like a fly flies into the spider web. One little foot is caught, then another foot, and within a few minutes he's totally entangled. Padam padam yat vipadam natesham, the Bhagavad Purana says, danger at every step. So if we want to become free and become happy, we're supposed to speak about happiness, but Krishna says, Abrahma bhuvana loko puna arvita. He doesn't describe much happiness in this world. But there is an abode where there's unlimited happiness. This world there's happiness, but there's always sand in the ice cream. There's always some sand in the sweet rice. There's happiness. Who can deny it? But let us be frank. Sadhu technically means one who cuts our attachment with knowledge. Let us speak openly. Yes, there is happiness in this world. But this is a world of duality. There's up and down, black and white, yes and no, boy and girl, day and night. There's happiness. I'm happy I'm down here in South India, not freezing in Delhi. I'm happy I got over my cold. And I'm happy to be with all of you wonderful people this evening. But there's also distress. And everyone has their story. From the womb to the grave, from the cradle to the grave. And I don't need to retell the story. Just read the newspaper next time you're on the plane. Everyone has their story in this world. So one student said to me one time, Swamiji, be real. That's what life is all about. You have to tolerate. Take the good, appreciate the good, and tolerate the bad. I said, no. You deserve more than that. You're a child of God. He didn't create you for a second class, third class, fifth class life. You were created for something greater. Your heritage is much greater than that. I said there is a world that exists where there is unlimited bliss, ananda, and happiness.